My talk is on semantic redefining of global communication in the Unforeseen force majeure. Russian poet Boris Pasternak once said, "A completely new age is beginning with the new tasks and new demands on the heart and on human dignity. A silent age which will never be proclaimed and allowed voice, but will grow more real without noticing it. That is why the hard heart of the world is not my business. Even the problem of sin and death, hellfire and brimstone, when before the eyes of all I have grown with you, in my infinite sorrow and my infinite joy, as the graft grown with that of a tree." Semantic redefining needs us to go into the hindsight. From infancy, from babyhood, we're all contoured to the sense of rigid conditioning, physically and emotionally, and even psychically, into a prejudiced mental conformity. We're technologized and structured into externalities and superficial activities without the very congenial awareness and conscious touch and source of it all. And this source of it all is the shunyaness that I'm talking about. That is in the inside that flutters on our outside neurosis and psychosis of behavior, which means our sensitivity is highly specialized, leaving our attitude and approach towards life blinkered, divided, and really partial. In 2020, as the world finds itself boxified to Zoom and et al. Like ours today, there is a sense of transboundary connections which are so much more virtual as the new normal. And this new normal has left the whole human race across the continent, across the countries, across the world into an eerie isolation of this virtual extension. How ironic. This human mind that has been the very genesis of biological survival, which gave mankind the very mystery of Earth, the evolution of the universe and everything, which gave him supremacy in the planet. Yet, this is the exact same reason why what makes man so vulnerable. And as a world, we're so vulnerable, almost on the brink of debilitating extinction, perhaps. Humans have always, used this powerfully evolved mind of theirs differently. And this differently would mean no longer merely to protect the self-protection, self-perpetuation, and self-expansion. Again, looking at the hindsight, in the primitive age, when humans were incredibly successful, they were able to be so successful because all that mattered in the primitive age was survival for the fittest and personal survival. But as a social being, mankind has largely not been as successful. I would go on to say that it's kind of been a failure, a collective failure. In fact, Maurice Fredman has said, even insects have had a greater social integration evolution as compared to us humans. It may be argued that animal kingdom and societies are based only on instincts and are thus rigid. But human societies will have to reflect the infinite permanent evolution and social laboratory where new forms of relationship patterns between man and man, society and man is found, which evolves on the touchstone of resilience, harmony, happiness, and the rigidity of a united spirit, which is in Indian philosophy, the Vasudev Kutumbakam, world as one single large family. However, when you look at wisdom and intelligence, while we exercise this philosophy, wisdom is in seeing things as they are and not trying to make them appear better or worse, looking at a spade as a spade and nothing else. The new normal and the transverse of this kind of a real isolation into the virtual integration as the new social or the new normal, it has thrown us all off tune. We've all fallen out of tune and the laws of our own being, and we've always been on and off tune ever since the evolution, has taken place, even historically, therefore suffering the consequences. But what can be devised in this communicative thread is a tendency towards impersonal awareness, operating constantly and almost spontaneously. That is, being more aware than being more engrossed. There is a reason why I say this. And that is because, when one reads the history of pandemic in the world, there is one dramatic aspect of epidemic response, that comes out again and again. And it is the desire to assign the responsibility, as we are trying to wade through the pandemic. And in this desire to assign the responsibility, whether it has been the Jews in the medieval Europe to the meat mongers in the Chinese markets, someone is always blamed. And this discourse of blame exploits existing social divisions of the society, religion, race, interpersonal, intercontinental, and inter-country, communication and gender identity. We've increasingly become influenced by the precept of the examples of others that are derived from I, from the me. And this kind of a temperament is visible amongst the world leaders now, country communication, and the masses in general across the world. And this is a supremely short-sighted response, no matter how resilient we believe us to be. In the semantic realm, one cannot possibly train oneself to practice this living in the new, present, or old reality. As Joseph Campbell talks about the power of myth, he's described a very beautiful aspect. He says that the vast, unfathomable mystery of human life actually lays within the vastness of himself. And what he says is that when you're falling, you rather dive. And that is a very fearless perspective of how we deal and should deal with the infinite unknown in our lives, in our worlds, in our conflicts, in the commotion of this new normal, extensively, which is being mediated by technology, media, and social media interfaces. A little bit of a reality check. This again takes us, I'm going to take you all into the hindsight again by narrating a little bit of an excerpt from Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman. The story of Willy Loman, I'm sure we're all aware of it, a sexagenarian who seriously believed that success was all about the destination one had reached and did not bother about the journey that led into it. He always regretted not going to Alaska with his elder brother, Ben, where, the latter ended up, finding the diamond mines and came out being super rich out of the jungle at the age of 21. All of which Willy remembered about his elder brother was that Ben and his ultimate success, but he refused to think about the grind that Ben went through in those 4 years, beginning from the age of 17. He always, dreamt about making it big someday. Willy always wanted to make it big someday, but refused to traverse the path of the toil that involved to making it big someday. A disease which is so commonly found in the world today in the autopsy of, the failure of responses across the world, across the paradigms, across the living. He chose to continuously dream about becoming an ace salesman one day and sometime in the distant future. He had been a traveling salesman all his life, a mercurial salesman with calluses in his hands, and he would return home tired, dejected, driving for 700 miles every week. He was diligent and was concerned about doing a good job, being a good citizen, pleasing the authority, everything that ticked the boxes of being a good salesman, perhaps. But even though he was hardworking, reliable, and meticulous, all of it did not change his fate. Despite his hard work, the Lomans always had lived and were living at the edge of the poverty. And Willy had always been, very underlying in his company. And he constantly told himself and his family that, he deserves something more and the big break was somewhere around the corner. As the play progresses and Willy's work life worsens, he fails to see that changing times in the business of expectations and in the business of business have actually changed a lot too. After the demise of his old boss, his new boss, Howard, refuses to demands results, and he refuses to believe that Willy is any longer useful for the company. He believes that Willy has probably outlived his usefulness in the company. The frustration of the inability to grow in his professional sphere and his ultimate termination takes a toll on his family life too. He gets impulsive, volatile, and he's always scared that, life or anybody else is treating him is treating him badly, and it makes him so vulnerable to the volatility of the not so good life. With nothing working for him, the failure becomes increasingly abject with every passing day, and Willy begins to very gradually kill himself by inhaling gas fumes first from the hose in the garage, an act that relieves his mental anguish and gives him a momentary high. And the gas muddles with Willy's mind, conflating his concept of time and space. And as the years pile up, he emotionally gets extremely volatile and tries to commit suicide, and ultimately succeeds in the third attempt. Now he finally has succeeded in his third attempt. A dead Willy Loman is still a failure in the society. But did Willy actually die when he stopped breathing? Or did he die with that every single opportunity in his life that he missed with each of his frustrated aspirations? Was it really living when every second that he breathed was burdened with this weight of the dead American dream, and he chose to carry it like a cross around? Death was just like a metaphor for the decay that had set in Willy's life long before he actually died. And even then, in his demise, the rot and the stigma did not go away. Why am I narrating this? The question is, who is Willy Loman? And why am I narrating this story in 2020? Willy Loman reminds us of every single individual who's toiling day in and day out in the night, in the hope that it'll add up to the tomorrow, to the significant, brighter day than today. He's that every, aspirant, he's that every executive in a corporate behemoth, he's that every dreamer who wants to make it big, but circumstantially has somewhere been, boxed into the new normal. Now, Willy Loman and every individual probably participated in the rat race without stopping over and reflecting about the run itself. And he's that every sadly derailed human who did not see the changing tides of time and that swept all his past successes and left him stranded. He's that aspiration who just had the external locus of control. He was a resultant of a discontentment, and he's clinging on to the past, and his death is a rude awakening. He's all of us who are playing our parts in the world run today, and finally, he's just the remainder. What actually has happened is that, sometimes life hurls and throws emergencies at us, like we're witnessing one today. During such times, we can either choose to react defensively or leverage the emergency to sort of mobilize and motivate the people around us, and not just individually. On the other hand, one cannot afford to sit, and imagine that the emergencies would probably come and that big moment would one day come and I would change my life. We must actively need to cultivate the essence of understanding of the emergency that is around us, whether internal or external. And if we anticipate the crisis and help the people realize how it affects them, affects our lives, miracles can happen. And under such circumstances, people will be willing to give their best performances, best fight out, because what is yours is now mine, and that becomes their and our emergency together. Thank you so much. I'd wind up here. I wanted to make it very brief because I also wanted to extend my love and thanks and so much love to the whole team. It's been such an honor to be here for the fourth time. Thank you so much.